The galaxy had seen warships before, massive, deadly vessels that carried the might of entire species, but nothing could prepare the galaxy for the arrival of the Resolute. The human warship was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Its dark metallic hull gleamed as it drifted slowly into the space station's orbit, a distant, silent giant in the expanse of space. The station, once bustling with alien diplomats and traders, had grown quiet in the wake of the ship's arrival. Eyes turned, not in awe, but in fear. Humans had always been considered newcomers to the galactic scene, their technological advancements not quite matching the age-old empires that had controlled the galaxy for centuries. But now, with the Resolute in orbit, everything had changed. The ship was an anomaly, something that threatened the established balance of power. No one had expected humanity to develop such a weapon, least of all the Galactic Council, the governing body of the galaxy. Captain Marcus Drake, a grizzled veteran of humanity's military campaigns, stood at the helm of the Resolute, his expression unyielding. He knew the implications of this moment. The ship was not just a weapon, it was a statement that humanity would no longer be underestimated. The Resolute had been designed for one purpose: to ensure that humanity would never be bullied again. The humans had been negotiating for months, working toward a peace agreement with several species that had been in open conflict. But the moment the Resolute entered the system, those talks came to a screeching halt. The Galactic Council, composed of representatives from dozens of species, immediately issued an order. The Resolute was to be disarmed. Its power was too great, and the balance of the galaxy could not stand against such a weapon. "We cannot allow this ship to remain operational," said the representative from the Xantori, a race of ancient, warlike beings. "The Resolute is a threat to the peace we fought so long to maintain. It must be destroyed." The words were met with murmurs of agreement from the council members. The Xantori were known for their aggressive stance on weapons, having fought countless wars across the galaxy. But it was the humans' response that sent a ripple through the council chambers. Captain Drake stood, speaking not as a diplomat, but as a leader of his people. His voice was calm, but filled with an unmistakable intensity. "The Resolute is a symbol of humanity's right to defend itself. We will not disarm, nor will we dismantle our ship. We have earned our place among the stars. If you want peace, then respect our sovereignty." The silence that followed was heavy. Some members of the council shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others stared at Drake, as if he had just challenged the very foundation of galactic order. The Xantori, who had once been willing to negotiate, now seemed ready to take action. The tension in the room was palpable. The Resolute wasn't just a warship. It was a mirror reflecting humanity's resilience, their refusal to be intimidated. And as the ship loomed over the station, Captain Drake knew the galaxy would never be the same again. For better or worse, the age of human dominance had begun. The Galactic Council's response came swiftly. The moment Captain Drake's refusal echoed through the chamber, a tense silence fell. The alien species seated around the table, some old and wise, others young and eager, had never anticipated such resistance from humanity. They were used to dealing with the established powers, not this unpredictable new force. But Captain Drake's stance was firm, and the Council had underestimated the lengths humanity would go to protect its future. Minutes later, the transmission ended, and the holographic image of the Council members flickered out. Captain Drake turned to his officers, his face unwavering but his eyes darkened with the weight of the decision ahead. He had no intention of allowing anyone to dictate humanity's destiny, especially not after the sacrifices they had made to get to this point. It wasn't just about the Resolute, it was about making a statement for every human out there who had fought for their place in the stars. "Prepare for a demonstration," Drake ordered. "I'll show them exactly what we're capable of." On the bridge, the crew moved swiftly, performing their duties with practiced efficiency. The Resolute was a beast of a ship, its design a mixture of sleekness and raw power. Every inch of it was built for this moment. The command center's vast screens lit up as Drake's orders were relayed to every part of the ship. With a few commands, the massive warship began to move, its thrusters igniting as it glided toward a nearby asteroid belt, far enough from populated systems, but close enough for the galaxy to witness the coming spectacle. "What's the plan, Captain?" Commander Alia Haynes, the ship's second-in-command, asked, her voice steady despite the tension that had gripped them all. "We'll make a controlled shot," Drake replied. "They need to see what we can do, but we won't destroy anything important." Not yet. The ship's guns powered up, the low hum vibrating through the metal corridors. The Resolute's main cannon, a monstrous energy weapon capable of tearing apart entire fleets, aimed at an asteroid the size of a small moon. It was nothing more than a test, a warning. But to those watching, it would be more than enough to understand that this was a different kind of power. Drake stood with his arms crossed, watching the readouts. He could feel the tension building, both in his crew and in the galaxy itself. One shot, one demonstration, and they would understand. He glanced over at Alia, who gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. She knew what this meant. Humanity was not backing down. "Fire," Drake commanded. A flash of light filled the viewports, followed by a deafening roar that echoed through the ship. The energy blast lanced out from the Resolute's cannon, bright enough to be seen across multiple systems, slamming into the asteroid with the force of 1,000 suns. The rock shattered instantly, disintegrating into dust and debris. The shockwave reverberated through space, and even distant observers in the neutral zones could feel its power. For a moment, everything was still. Then the comm channels erupted. The Galactic Council's representatives were on the line, their voices filled with panic and disbelief. "What have you done?" The Xantori representative shouted. "You're insane to unleash such power." Captain Drake's calm voice cut through the chaos. "We're not the ones who are insane. We've made it clear. We will not be intimidated. The Resolute is humanity's right to defend itself, and no one will take that away from us." The Council's response was a mixture of anger, fear, and confusion. But it was too late for any diplomatic words. Humanity had made its stand. The Resolute was a weapon, yes, but it was also a symbol of defiance, a declaration that they would no longer be overlooked or controlled. As the Resolute drifted back into its position, far from the asteroid belt, but still radiating its quiet, overwhelming power, Captain Drake stood tall. He knew that this moment would be remembered across the galaxy, and he was ready for whatever came next. The Resolute had just made its first move. The galaxy would never be the same. The aftermath of the Resolute's demonstration rippled through the galaxy like a shockwave. The moment the asteroid had been reduced to dust, panic had set in. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council faced a challenge to its authority that wasn't a matter of diplomacy or trade disputes. Humanity had just shown that it could, with a single shot, reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The reaction was swift and intense. Back on the neutral space station, the Council convened in an emergency session. Representatives from every species, some of whom had never met face to face, joined together, each bringing their own concerns to the table. The mood was grim. The Resolute was more than just a warship. It was a glaring symbol of something that the Council had worked tirelessly to prevent. An unchecked force that could tip the galactic scale. "We cannot allow this to continue," said Xantori Prime, the head of the Xantori delegation, their deep voice booming with authority. "That kind of power cannot be controlled. If humanity is allowed to wield such a weapon, it will undermine everything we fought for." The Resolute had shown the galaxy a power that no one had anticipated, and now, those in power feared what would happen if that ship's potential was unleashed. What would stop the humans from using their weapon to subjugate others, to seize control of the galaxy for themselves? A representative from the Silari, a race known for their diplomatic prowess, spoke next, his tone calculated. "We cannot let emotions cloud our judgment. This ship, this human weapon, cannot be allowed to stay operational. It violates the very laws that govern our peace treaties. If we allow it to remain, It could set a dangerous precedent for every other species in the galaxy. The Council's attention turned to the Resolute, still floating calmly above the station, its presence a reminder of the power humanity had just unleashed. Everyone knew that this issue could not be ignored. The Resolute was too powerful to be left unchecked, and the potential for abuse was too great. The debate became heated. Some argued that humanity's actions were a natural extension of their independence, their right to defend themselves against the dangers of the galaxy. Others argued that the ship posed a grave threat to the very fabric of galactic peace. But it was clear that the Council was now divided. One faction, led by the Xantori and the Lyrith, two of the most ancient and warlike species in the galaxy, demanded that the Resolute be disarmed and dismantled. They pushed forward a new law that would ban any warship capable of exceeding certain energy thresholds. The Resolute's power far surpassed these limits, and under this new law, it would be considered illegal. "The law is the law," the Xantori Prime stated flatly, his expression unwavering. "We must preserve peace, and to do so, humanity must face the consequences of their actions." Captain Drake, back aboard the Resolute, watched the transmission from the bridge, his face unreadable. He had expected this. The Resolute's demonstration had made it clear that humanity's place in the galaxy would not be easily accepted. But he wasn't going to let the Council dictate humanity's future. Not now. Not ever. "They want us to disarm," Drake said, his voice cold with resolve. "But we're not backing down. We didn't build the Resolute for them. We built it for us." His crew stood at attention, understanding the gravity of his words. The decision was made. The humans would not yield to the demands of the Galactic Council. "The Resolute will remain operational," Captain Drake continued, turning to face his officers. "We'll show them that humanity will not be pushed around. If they want peace, they will have to respect our sovereignty." As the transmission ended, Captain Drake's words hung in the air, the tension palpable. The Resolute was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's newfound strength and their refusal to be governed by the established powers of the galaxy. But what the Council didn't realize yet was that this was only the beginning. The Resolute's true purpose was yet to unfold. And soon, the galaxy would understand what humanity was truly capable of. In the days following the Council's decision to press for the Resolute's disarmament, tensions between humanity and the galaxy's established powers reached a boiling point. Captain Marcus Drake, unwavering in his commitment to protecting humanity's right to defend itself, prepared for the inevitable. He knew the Council wouldn't back down easily, but he had no intention of disarming. What he didn't anticipate was the undercurrent of betrayal that began to swirl around him, just beneath the surface. A week after the Council's legal action was announced, strange things started happening. Small, almost unnoticeable glitches began appearing in the Resolute's systems. Navigation controls would momentarily freeze, communications would drop for a few seconds, and energy readings would fluctuate. At first, the crew dismissed it as a few minor technical issues, but Captain Drake could feel the weight of something more sinister. Then, during a routine check of the ship's defensive systems, Lieutenant Harper noticed a critical breach in the outer hull. The damage was not enough to cause immediate danger, but it was clear that the breach had not been caused by any external force. Someone had tampered with the ship. Harper immediately reported to Captain Drake, who called for a full investigation. The crew worked quickly, tracing the source of the breach to an external device planted on the hull. It was small, well-concealed, and designed to disable the ship's power grid for a brief period. Whoever had done this was sophisticated, with access to classified ship systems. The breach was no accident. As the investigation continued, suspicions began to rise. It wasn't just sabotage. There was a larger conspiracy at play. Captain Drake knew that the Resolute had many enemies, but he hadn't expected one to come from within. The very people who were supposed to protect the ship, its crew, and humanity's future were now working against them. The crew was on edge. Trust had been shattered, and there was fear in the air. Someone aboard the ship was a traitor, and it wasn't long before Captain Drake's worst fears were confirmed. Lieutenant Alia Haynes, his trusted second-in-command, had been compromised. Haynes had always been loyal, her dedication to the crew and their mission had never been in question. But it turned out that she had been passing information to a faction within the Galactic Council. This faction, a group of moderate voices who had quietly supported the Xantori's push for disarmament, had made an agreement with Haynes. In exchange for her cooperation, they'd promised her a position of power once the Resolute was decommissioned. The betrayal hit hard. Drake had always trusted Alia. And now, as he stood in front of her in the ship's interrogation room, the weight of that trust crumbled before him. She looked at him with a mixture of guilt and defiance, unwilling to fully break under the pressure. "I never wanted it to come to this, Marcus," Haynes said, her voice trembling slightly, but still holding a trace of her old resolve. "But I couldn't watch humanity continue to provoke the galaxy like this. You were making enemies, and there was no way to stop it." Drake's expression was cold. "You sold us out, Alia. You've betrayed everything we stand for." "I did what I thought was right," she replied quietly, her voice breaking. "You're making a mistake, Marcus. The Resolute, it's too much. We're not ready for this." For a moment, there was silence between them. It was as though the walls of the interrogation room closed in on Drake, the weight of Alia's betrayal suffocating. But he didn't have time to mourn. He had a ship to protect, and a galaxy to keep safe from itself. "Take her to the brig," he ordered flatly, "and prepare the crew. This is far from over." The betrayal left a bitter taste in his mouth, but Captain Drake refused to let it slow him down. The Resolute was not just a ship, it was humanity's future. And no matter who turned against them, he would make sure they would be ready for whatever came next. As the crew worked to repair the sabotage and restore full functionality to the Resolute, word spread quickly through the ranks. The message was clear: humanity would never be broken, no matter who tried to tear them apart. The galaxy had made a powerful enemy, and Captain Marcus Drake would stop at nothing to make sure humanity's place among the stars was never threatened again. The sabotage aboard the Resolute was just the beginning. Despite Lieutenant Haynes's betrayal, Captain Marcus Drake remained resolute. He couldn't afford to let a traitor's actions cloud his vision. Humanity had come too far to let this warship, this symbol of their strength, be dismantled by political maneuvering. But the Resolute's challenges were far from over. In fact, the galaxy's reaction to humanity's defiance was beginning to shape something far darker than they could have anticipated. The Galactic Council, divided and increasingly desperate, continued to push forward with the new law that would see the Resolute disarmed. The argument for decommissioning had gained momentum in the wake of the sabotage. The Xantori and the Lyreth were vocal in their demands, calling for immediate action to remove such a powerful weapon from human hands. But it wasn't just those two species pushing for a galactic ban. Smaller races, fearful of what humanity's show of force meant for their future, began to rally behind the call for disarmament. The debate in the council grew more heated. Captain Drake's defiance was seen as an act of aggression, and to many, it proved that humanity had no intention of following the galactic laws that had kept peace for centuries. While Drake had argued that the Resolute was a defensive measure, many in the galaxy began to view it as a threat to their security, a challenge to the established order. It wasn't just political figures who were upset. Across the galaxy, protests began to erupt. On planets once neutral to humanity's cause, anti-human factions rallied, their anger fueled by the growing belief that humans were a danger to galactic peace. Small militant groups formed, claiming that they would protect the galaxy from humanity's rise to power. These protests soon turned violent. In several systems, humans found themselves attacked on the streets by mobs, their properties looted or burned. It wasn't just the Resolute they feared. It was what the ship represented. Humanity was no longer the quiet newcomers on the galactic stage. They were now a force to be reckoned with. And that terrified many. Captain Drake, sitting in his command center, watched the rising unrest unfold across the holoscreens. His face remained stoic, but inside, he was torn. The Resolute was a weapon, yes, but it was also humanity's shield. Without it, what would they have? He couldn't allow his people to suffer because of their strength. He had to make sure the ship remained operational, not just for his crew, but for every human who had ever fought for their place in the stars. Captain, Commander Haynes, now promoted in Alia's place, said as she entered the bridge, "We've received new intelligence. The Council is moving to send peacekeepers to neutralize the Resolute. They're preparing for an assault." Drake's eyes narrowed. An assault? Under the guise of restoring order, Haynes continued. "But we both know this isn't about peace. It's about control. If we stand down now, it will show the galaxy that we are weak, that the Resolute isn't ours to keep." The weight of the decision hung heavily over the captain. He knew what would come next. The galaxy would either bow to humanity's resolve, or it would force them to fight for their right to exist in the stars. "Gather the crew," he said, his voice cold with determination. "We will not back down. Prepare the Resolute for whatever comes." With his orders given, Drake stood tall. The Resolute was humanity's last line of defense, and he wouldn't let it fall. Outside the ship, a storm was brewing. The Resolute had become more than just a warship. It had become a symbol of defiance. As the ship's weapons powered up and the crew prepared for the worst, one thing was certain: humanity would no longer be silent. The time for negotiation was over. The galaxy's response to the human rebellion would decide everything. Would they be crushed under the weight of galactic opposition, or would they rise to claim their place as true players in the cosmic order? Captain Drake didn't have the answers yet, but he knew this: humanity would fight until the very end. The quiet before the storm was filled with anticipation. The Resolute sat in its position, its weapons powered up and shields at maximum. Captain Marcus Drake stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the approaching fleet of peacekeepers sent by the Galactic Council. The decision was made. There would be no turning back. The peacekeepers were a mixture of ships from various galactic powers, all armed and ready to enforce the new law. They had been dispatched to neutralize the Resolute, to ensure that humanity's weapon would be decommissioned once and for all. But what the Council didn't realize was that the Resolute wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's declaration of independence, and Captain Drake would not allow anyone to take that from them. "Captain, the fleet is approaching," Commander Haynes reported, her voice steady, but with an undercurrent of tension. "They're preparing to engage us." Drake nodded, his expression unshakable. "I know. Prepare the crew. We're not backing down." As the enemy fleet moved into position, Drake could feel the tension building in the Resolute's core. The ship, an extension of humanity's will, hummed with power, ready to defend its crew and its cause. Every system was on high alert, every officer poised for what would surely be a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. "All hands to battle stations," Drake ordered, his voice firm. "Today, we make our stand." The massive fleet of peacekeepers took their positions, surrounding the Resolute on all sides. They were well organized, with multiple heavy-hitting warships in their ranks, and they outnumbered humanity's single vessel by a significant margin. But the Resolute was not just any warship. It was the culmination of years of research, innovation, and an unyielding spirit. "Captain, they're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put them through," Drake said, his voice a mixture of calm and resolve. A holographic image of the Xantori Prime flickered to life in front of him. The massive reptilian figure glared at him with a mixture of contempt and calculated coldness. "Marcus Drake," the Xantori Prime growled. "You are a fool to defy the Galactic Council. You stand alone, and your ship will be destroyed. Surrender now, and we will show mercy." Drake's response was simple, but it carried the weight of everything humanity had fought for. "We will never surrender. The Resolute will not fall." The hologram flickered and disappeared, and with it, the final bridge of diplomacy was burned. The peacekeepers moved into position, their weapons primed. The time for words was over. Now, only action remained. Drake turned to his officers. Brace for impact. Engage the enemy. The Resolute fired its first shot, a brilliant beam of concentrated energy that tore through the hull of the nearest peacekeeper ship, sending it spinning into the void. The enemy ships retaliated with a barrage of fire, but the Resolute's shields absorbed the incoming blasts, flickering but holding strong. The sheer size of the Resolute's main cannon made it a formidable opponent. It could take down a fleet of warships with just a few well-placed shots. But it wasn't just firepower that made the Resolute so dangerous. It was its speed, maneuverability, and the expertise of its crew. "Captain, they're flanking us," Haynes warned. "We need to take out their lead ships, or they'll get us in a crossfire." Drake's mind worked quickly. Engage evasive maneuvers. Target the lead ship's engines. Disable them. The Resolute swung into a sharp turn, its massive guns swiveling into position. Another blinding blast fired from its main cannon, hitting the lead ship squarely in its engine core. The ship erupted into a fireball, sending debris flying in every direction. Two more ships followed suit, their attempts to outmaneuver the Resolute proving futile. The enemy fleet, now disoriented and under heavy fire, began to break formation. The Resolute's sheer power and precision were overwhelming. It wasn't just the strength of the ship, it was the strength of humanity's will, embodied in every shot, every maneuver, every decision. "Captain, we've disabled their central command ship," Haynes reported. "Their fleet is scattering. They're in disarray." Drake allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction before his focus returned to the battle. "Don't let up. Keep the pressure on them." As the battle raged on, one thing became clear. The Resolute wasn't just defending itself, it was sending a message. Humanity would not be intimidated, and it would not bow to the will of the Galactic Council. No matter the cost, they would protect their right to exist as equals in the galaxy. The Peacekeepers' fleet, now crippled and in retreat, had learned one thing. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The battlefield was a swirling chaos of debris, fractured ships, and scattered remnants of what had once been the might of the Galactic Council's peacekeeping force. The Resolute stood at the center of the wreckage, its hull scared but intact. The battle was far from over, but the message was clear. Humanity had sent a shockwave through the galaxy, and no one would soon forget the price they were willing to pay to defend their sovereignty. Captain Marcus Drake stood at the command center, watching as the final peacekeeper ships limped away, their damaged forms drifting through the void. Their retreat was a testament to the Resolute's overwhelming firepower, but Drake knew that the victory came with a heavy cost. The Resolute had sustained damage to its lower shields, and the energy reserves were dangerously low. The crew was exhausted, their adrenaline worn thin after hours of combat. "Captain, we've won," Commander Haynes said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "The enemy fleet is pulling back. They've sustained catastrophic losses." Drake nodded, though the victory did little to ease the weight on his shoulders. "We've won this battle, yes, but the war is far from over. The Council won't take this lightly." As if on cue, a comm alert chimed through the bridge. It was a transmission from the Galactic Council, a grim reminder that the galaxy's reaction to humanity's defiance was far from finished. The hologram of Xantori Prime flickered into existence again, this time accompanied by the representatives of the Lyrith and several other species. The reptilian leader's face twisted with fury, but his voice was measured and cold. "You have made your point, Captain Drake, but you have also made your enemies. Your actions today will not go unpunished. The Council's ruling stands. The Resolute will be dismantled, and your people will face the consequences." Drake's jaw clenched as he met Xantori Prime's gaze. "Your threats don't scare us anymore. You sent your peacekeepers, and they were defeated. Humanity will not bend to your demands." "You are out of your depth," the Xantori Prime replied, his voice low but filled with contempt. "You have no allies left. This is not just about one ship. You have defied the laws that have kept this galaxy in peace for millennia. Your actions are an act of war. And now you will face the full might of the Galactic Council. Drake's mind raced. He knew the Council had many more resources at their disposal, vast fleets, armies, and political alliances that could isolate humanity in ways they had not yet imagined. But something inside him told him that there was no turning back. To yield now would be to lose everything they had fought for. "We won't be intimidated," Drake said firmly, his voice carrying over the tense silence. "We'll fight to the last. Humanity has earned its place in the stars, and no one will take that away from us." Centauri Prime's hologram flickered once more before he spoke again. "Very well. Prepare yourselves. The galaxy will not forgive this insolence. You will learn the cost of defying the established order." With that, the transmission ended, leaving Captain Drake alone with his thoughts. His crew had fought bravely, but the coming days would test their resolve even further. The Resolute had proven its might, but now they would need more than firepower to survive the galaxy's wrath. "Commander, set course for the outer rim," Drake ordered. "We need to regroup. We can't take on the entire galaxy at once." Haynes nodded, already issuing the commands to navigate the Resolute away from the debris of the battlefield. "Aye, Captain. We'll make it to the outer rim, but it won't be long before the Council sends reinforcements." "We'll be ready," Drake said, his eyes hardening with determination. Humanity will not fall. As the Resolute made its way into deeper space, far from the immediate conflict, the crew began the long process of repairs. The battle had left them shaken, but it had also proven something vital to Drake. Humanity was no longer the weak, untested species it had once been. The galaxy had seen their strength, and though they would face a harsh road ahead, they were no longer afraid to walk it. The fight was far from over, and now the question was no longer whether humanity would survive. It was whether the galaxy could survive the reckoning that humanity had just begun. The Resolute drifted through the outer rim, far from the heart of the galaxy where the Galactic Council's influence was strongest. In the quiet emptiness of deep space, Captain Marcus Drake stood at the bridge, staring out into the vastness of the stars. The galaxy had changed irrevocably in the wake of the battle. Humanity had proven its strength, but now they would have to face the consequences. The ship's hull was patched up, but the damage was significant. Crew morale had taken a hit, despite their hard-fought victory. They had destroyed a fleet, but the Council's retaliation was still looming. It was only a matter of time before reinforcements arrived, and when they did, they would bring more than just ships. The full might of the galaxy's power would come crashing down on humanity, and the Resolute would be the target. "We need to prepare for what's coming next," Drake said, his voice steady. He turned to his crew, who were working at their stations with renewed focus. "We don't know how long we have, but we're not going to make it easy for them." Commander Haynes walked up to him, her face a mask of determination. "The repairs are underway, Captain. The crew is tired, but they're ready. They want to see this through." "Good," Drake replied. "We'll need every single one of them. We're going to make sure that when the Council comes, they understand one thing. Humanity won't be intimidated. We'll fight for our future." In the following days, the crew worked tirelessly to keep the Resolute operational. They strengthened their shields, recalibrated their weapon systems, and made sure every defense was in place. But even as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation, Drake knew there was something more they needed: alliances. The galaxy was vast, and humanity couldn't fight every war alone. They needed allies who would stand by them, especially now that they had made themselves enemies of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Drake had already begun sending diplomatic overtures to various species, ones that had been neutral or even sympathetic to humanity's cause in the past. Some of these races were small, others more powerful, but all of them had seen the Resolute's power. Many were aware that if the Council could crush humanity, they would be next. One by one, The first responses started to come in. The Xanth, a race of technologically advanced explorers, had agreed to meet with Drake. They had no love for the Council and had long been disillusioned with its bureaucratic grip on the galaxy. The Argolan Coalition, an alliance of peaceful merchant planets, had sent a message of support. Even the Orcs, a fierce warrior race that had long avoided conflict, reached out, offering assistance in exchange for trade agreements with humanity. While not all the responses were positive, there was a glimmer of hope. Humanity was not alone. And as the news of these new potential alliances spread through the crew, morale began to lift. They were no longer an isolated species fighting against an overwhelming enemy. They were becoming part of a new force, one that would reshape the future of the galaxy. The Resolute continued its journey through the Outer Rim, slowly but surely gaining allies and strengthening its position. The message was spreading. Humanity had power, and they would not back down. The galaxy was a place of alliances and power struggles, but humanity had just proven that it had a place in that world, a place they had earned through strength and resolve. Captain Drake stood on the bridge, looking at the stars ahead. The road ahead would not be easy, but humanity had already proven one thing. They were willing to fight for their place among the stars. The Resolute was more than just a warship now. It was a symbol of everything humanity had fought for, everything they stood for, a beacon of defiance in a galaxy that was learning the true power of humanity. And as the stars stretched before them, Captain Drake knew one thing for certain. Humanity's future was theirs to decide.